Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Oh, pinky's up. Oh, we have.
I don't understand. I still don't understand why woos don't work.
Well, I think it just
makes me sad.
It's time. It's time. You know, it's the timing. It's the timing between the Zoom and the
every week.
audio.
Those of you who experience in the audio land get to hear my awesome singing once a week. That's how you know the show is starting. Yep. We said, what did we say? It's our kulu cuckoo of the show. Of the movie show
yes, it is.
But if you're watching the video, song. I sound like.
Yeah, it cuts in and out because
we're something.
Well, it's because we're sharing the sound and the pitch that you come in. That ooh, I think filters maybe if I turn my background noise filter just to low from medium, maybe it's thinking
I suspect it's just it's the first sound that the thing hears and it just doesn't know how to cope with it. But it makes me sad because you just got to believe me, YouTube viewers, of which there are two of you. I sound awesome doing that.
Every week.
Sorry for my insecurities about that to ruin the clever opening Joel clearly had planned for the show. But
I was
the producers. It's awesome. It's Sarah is awesome. It gets you in the mood for the show.
Yep.
I love it.
It is our clarion call to come join our discussion of film de cinema. So, and of course,
was it you that asked me if I have a skinny enough tie earlier, like a couple of weeks ago? Was that you?
It was.
I got a skinny tie. I just got a big fat body.
Big fat body and
that's
a skinny
the problem.
tie.
The tie I got, the keytar I got. The problem is.
Wait, whoa, time out. You have a keytar?
There's no fat. Yeah, a cheap one, but yes.
I did not know that.
As a prop.
I may need to see that next time I'm over in your neck of the woods. I did not know you had a keytar.
If you remember to ask.
Yeah.
It's like it's not the one you blow in like what's
a
his face
melodica,
uses on the Colbert show.
Yeah.
But it's just don't get excited. It's not a Howard Jones, full on guitar.
Okay.
It's a little toy.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But nevertheless.
Yeah, I mean,
it has a handle.
It's more of a keytar than I have. Yeah, I did. Right. Man, I vividly remember going through I gotta have a keytar. I want a keytar so bad. I wanted one so bad. Oh God, that was gonna be gorgeous. Really? Oh, I wanted a keytar.
Yeah, I think I'm as big a Gary Wright and Howard Jones fan as you're ever gonna find. But even then. I was like, that's the lamest thing I've ever seen.
Because I just wanted to be out in front, and when I wanted to be in a band, and I wanted to be out front and be able to, sing and interact with the crowd instead of being behind the keyboard doing that. I wanted to be able to run around and rock and roll like guitar players, but with keyboards. That's cool, right? Yeah, no, okay.
I liked it. I had my drums aimed sideways, and I had the keyboards behind me because I played both, and I could turn to my side slightly, like Kelly Keegy and Night Ranger, and sing to the audience. So I could do all three things. And I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Eventually I came around, and I worked my sitting at the pianography pretty
I
well.
felt safe behind all that crap, to be honest. That helped me do my job a little bit better.
Yeah.
I couldn't dance or anything.
Yeah,
so
I didn't mind that. I like.
But I had a microphone stand that I could pull up and down real easy. So if I wasn't playing drums, I could stand up. I could move around. I could change positions. That was key.
Well, welcome welcome everybody to 1990s high school band talk. with your hosts, Joel and Ryan. That's a subset of our movie show discussion that I think everyone has been waiting for. I think everyone's been waiting for
and it
this.
Couldn't be less relevant to what we've come to talk to you about today.
That's true. I did have my whole pinkies up. I was going to talk about clotted cream and cucumber finger sandwiches and.
So sorry about that little
No, that's all right.
But the truth is, this whole show is a collection of non sequiturs. So
it is. This one is
cool.
This one is we have some ideas, but then we're like, but I don't want to do that this week. And we have some fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks especially as we get into the holidays and holiday season and stuff. But today's show is brought to you by two guys going back and forth via text message, just going, I don't know, what about this? Man, maybe there's something here. Well, I could talk about this for a few minutes, and you know what? I did just watch this. Well, here I got an idea, and then here we go. Here's your show.
Joel's really cool idea was Star Wars side characters, but it's by Thursday it's too late to go digging into that kind of thing.
That was the other part.
It's a great idea, so that's certainly coming. But
that was.
I think it's going to be more of an action figure show than an actual side character show.
Correct.
Because you kind of make up your own stories about these guys, don't you?
I have so many stories that involve Bosk. It's not even funny.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
But no, and this week was tough. I got knocked on my butt by my COVID booster. Just a real bonkers week for me that way. But my Thursday was like, oh my God, it's Thursday already. Whew, okay, let's do a show. But I think we have a bunch of fun stuff.
I was on quarantine the last 2 weeks, so I watched.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about that. You came out okay. You didn't actually catch it. You were.
Yeah, I was in close contact, but my whole office got sent home and quarantined, and I hung out here for 2 weeks. I didn't go get tested I didn't have to, but I didn't because I didn't want to, and I just figured I'll know in 10 days. Yeah. I'll certainly know if I got it or not.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who wouldn't notice if they got. Some people don't. Some kids don't. They get COVID and they share it with everybody and they don't even know they have it.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those people. I would know. So I just waited it out and nothing happened. So hooray.
Yay. Yeah, no, very happy to hear that.
But I had to cancel a bunch of plans and I couldn't go anywhere and do anything. So I had movies playing pretty much nonstop.
You know what? There are worse ways to spend a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, I got to work at home, thankfully. So the money kept rolling in, baby. That's what's important.
That's true. You got to fund. We have to be able to fund these habits.
Indeed.
And all right. So
this show's kind of inspired by that a little bit. These are the things that I watched, but.
And just in case for some reason you've waited until season 4, episode 39, I think, to hit play on this. Welcome to the movie show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're happy that you joined us.
And wow, and you're still here after all that in the opening.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Bravo that whatever happened in your life. Yeah.
And your hearty constitutions that you have. That's just very impressive. Good job.
So all right, we have a grab bag of a show but I think we have some fun stuff. And we're going to come out of the gate guns a-blazing. This I almost feel like I should
you want to do your thing with your cup, or are you going to save that for later?
We'll do that. There'll be another opportunity to recycle that thing. That's just but probably, you know what, there might be a time later in the show I'll get to recycle that bit. Because we, here at the movie show, we're all about recycling. We want to make sure that we're doing our part for the environment. And I sort of feel like our opening salvo into today's episode, I almost want to hit the hot take button here, because this is
because it's related. We got to hot takes, got to save it to the end.
No, it's not related at all. It's just this sentence in itself. Saying Danny DeVito's Hoffa is better than The Irishman is is kind of
There
a
are
hot
three
take.
reasons why it's there are 3 reasons why it's better.
Yeah, 3 reasons.
There,
All right.
and one of the reasons encapsulates like 9 reasons.
I
watched Danny DeVito, his second, and he's done bits and bobs here and there since, but it's really his second and final big Hollywood directing job. Hoffa with Jack Nicholson back in 92, I want to say.
Yep, 1992.
It tells, it's not really fair to compare the two directly because they take place from 2 different points of view, but they basically tell the same story. They tell that same era with these same group of characters of the rise of the Teamsters and how their relation to organized crime and the disappearance, quote unquote, of labor organizer Jimmy Hoffa. And yeah, I like The Irishman. That was really high on our list of best films from last year, 2 years ago. But it's watching Hoffa, I just was reminded of how much I liked even the middling films of that era more than I like the ones of today, even when they're made by huge superstars, even when they get Joe Pesci to come out of retirement, even when they have De Niro and Pacino and all these people in them. It's exciting, don't get me wrong, but it's not, it's this sprawling, like everything but the kitchen sink movie. Like they don't leave anything out. And as a result, I think The Irishman ends up giving you a glance into all this amazing stuff that was happening at the time. And I do think it's really tremendous at that. And of course it has these special effect tools to de-age people so that you really can have an actor. It used to be you just layered on the makeup as the actor got older. You know what I mean? And Kingsley and Gandhi or whatever it is, you just, like go look at James Caan and Bette Midler and For the Boys. We were talking about that several episodes ago, and they look horrendous. They look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it ruins it. It's already stupid, so it doesn't help. That movie didn't have a prayer. But when you just see them in this old school kind of droopy, dinner theater style old age makeup, you just go, wow, it just really takes you back. And being able to do the opposite, being able to take an old Robert De Niro and make him look young, and then just slowly pull the effects back, like in The Irishman, that's magic. So I did not come to bury The Irishman. Okay, I came to praise Hoffa. I want to make that clear. Hoffa is really, really good. It's like stunningly good for a movie that we all remember as that was kind of good, right? Jack Nicholson as Hoffa. When you watch it now, it's stunning, and there's 3 key reasons why it's better. And the first one starts with the screenplay by David Mamet. Holy cow! In every way that The Irishman is this sprawling mess of an episodic thing that certainly is highlighted by all kinds of great stuff, Mamet's script for Hoffa makes sure that thematically and dramatically and from a character standpoint, everything is linked, everything is important. There's a distinct progression as we move through the story. It's everything The Irishman isn't. It's a clean, well-told story by a guy. I don't want to say that Mamet's a classicist in terms of a dramatist, but in today's standards, because he was a revolutionary in his own time, but by today's standards, he really is. He follows the template of the well-told story or the well-made play, which is what it's called in textbooks. Yeah. And the payoff to that is so powerful. Not to mention just when you got Mamet, think of the screenplay for The Untouchables. It's full of this great quotable stuff. Danny DeVito said that his son, he and Rhea Perlman's son was on set one day during this sort of big confrontation scene. He was hanging out and observing, and take your kid to work day, basically. and DeVito, and who knows, it's probably just talk show anecdotal BS. This probably didn't happen, but it's super funny. He says every time after that for like 6 months, he would tell his kid to like take out the garbage or do this, to clean up your room or whatever. And his son would say, "Dad, I'm going to do what I got to do," which is a big off a line from the movie, In all battles, there are casualties. The only thing that matters in the end is what has been gained and what has been lost. The whole film is full of these mammotisms that are just perfect for these sort of working class guys. And I adore the script, and I just love every line of it. And while I think to be fair, this was a compare and contrast segment. So again, I don't mean to keep crapping on The Irishman, but by comparison, it's really, really good, but it's so full of stuff, and it's 4 hours long. And it's like, it didn't make any of the hard decisions that you need to make it into a movie. It's like when we talked about, Justice League, the 4-hour version of that. I mean, is it better? Yeah, it's better, but it's way better because it's not completely artistically compromised like the theatrical version is. But does it need to be 4 hours long? Does the filmmaker have some responsibility to tighten it up, to make it something that's palatable for its own sake, instead of just legendarily long and epic? I think they kind of do. And I think if they would have, I don't know, it's like Electric Light Orchestra releases a double album, and everyone agrees, well, if this were a single album, it would be perfect, but it's a double album, so it's full of stuff you don't need. Right. The problem is, ask any two Electric Light Orchestra fans, which songs would you get rid of? And their answers are all going to be different. So, that it is tricky. I'm not claiming that it isn't. It is. What do you cut down? What do you get rid of? It's hard. What do you cut down, not just in the editing, but in the writing stage from The Irishman? They didn't even try to make it a small film. And when they knew they were going straight to streaming, they really sort of loosened their belts and let it all come out. And I think it's diminished because of that to some degree, even though you feel the lifelong epicness of it in a way that it would be hard to otherwise. Hoffa's tight, and it's because of the screenplay, because even at that stage, before the thing was cast, before the cameras were rolling, he was making decisions. What do I got to have? What do I don't have to have? Then the second is the cast. And I already said Irishman's cast is legendary. But it's bloated, and they're allowed to bloat. Ray Romano when he's on screen, you know what I mean, is very memorable because he's awesome in The Irishman. But at the same time, it's like he doesn't have to earn everything. The same character, I believe it's the same character, is played by J.T. Walsh in Hoffa, and Walsh is barely on screen, and he's got to get it all in there, what the essence of what this guy is. And it's stunning to watch a pro like Walsh do that work with very limited screen time, so that you absolutely get who he is. They're all kind of similar across the board. Armand Assante plays the same character. It's in both versions. They're sort of a legendary character, but they play, especially in Hoffa, the names have been changed to protect the not so innocent. In The Irishman, the film's from the point of view of the assassins. It's from the point of view of the mob, and not from the point of view of the labor organizers. And so there's a flip there. And I love Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa. I think the scene where they're watching the Kennedys on TV, and that courtroom scene is like Al off the hook, which is something usually that is always entertaining, but can lead to disaster, AKA Devil's Advocate or Scent of a Woman, where you're just going, dude, tone it down a little bit, man. But in The Irishman, and Heat, there's some other places where he just can go off, and it's joyous. So I really like Pacino as Hoffa, but The Irishman's told, and to be fair, it's told from this point of view. So this isn't a mistake it makes, but it is told from the point of view of the guy who killed him, or the guy who claims he killed him.
Yeah.
Still an unsolved mystery, technically. And so Hoffa is this clown, basically, who can't step out of, he's given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to step out of the way of his own doom, and just refuses to do it. And from the point of view of an assassin who doesn't want to kill him, that's powerful. But Hoffa, and Jack Nicholson, as he fully embodies the man, was not that. I don't think he was a Mack truck driving unencumbered and uncompromisingly into his own destiny. That's what DeVito's film feels like, and that feels like that's worthy of the man and worthy of the legend. DeVito obviously casts himself in the best role in The Thing. He's not a real guy. He's an amalgam character of all the sidekicks that Hoffa had throughout the years. And I think his best role still in The Rainmaker, but this is a close second, maybe even a tie for first. It's a stunning performance by DeVito, who has to be every bit the equal to Nicholson. And we talked a little bit about that last week, what kind of job that is. DeVito's got tons of screen presence. He's got a big personality. He's got all the tools to do that. But then just to be shooting the thing and producing the thing, and then to step in front of the camera and actually do it, and especially do it alongside of Nicholson's performance in this particular film, which is larger than life and really, really powerful, is really special. And I think that goes all the way down the line. I think it's Kevin Anderson plays Bobby Kennedy in it. He's brilliant. Yep. Asante is really scary and really awesome in it. Who's our buddy? He got a kind of bit role in this. He's in like Will Ferrell movies and stuff now, but he used to be in serious stuff. I can't remember his name.
John C. Reilly.
Yeah, John C. Reilly. He's great in it. Sorry, John. I mean, I know who he is, but I seem to always forget his name. Only when I need to say it in front of all you good people, then I forget. If I were just walking down the street, I'd be like, John C. Reilly is this and that, and nobody would be around to hear it. Hey, Joel. If a podcaster thinks of something super brilliant and nobody's around to hear it, are they really brilliant? I mean, it's like it's rhetorical, but think that over. I don't know, not to get all philosophical on you. I won't go into the whole compare and contrast to the cast, but it's not that the cast isn't brilliant. The Irishman, it's as brilliant as you could get. It's like this fantasy wish list of a cast. Truly, it is at every stage and at every part of it. But the more workman-like thing delivers a more earnest performances that are more grounded in reality, and therefore the whole thing feels more consequential. Yeah. And that's despite, Joel, the third reason that Hoffa is better than The Irishman, which is it's romantic. The whole thing is this romanticized version of labor and this is the opposite of what I was just saying in terms of casting. It's not a fly on the wall, slice of life bit of the madness of these lives. It's this sweeping, beautiful, cinematically delivered, where not every single Model T on the street in the background is in focus and not out of place. The lighting is brilliant. David Newman's score is amongst the best, if not the best, of the 90s. It's stunningly beautiful music, the likes of which they don't even let get into movies these days. Yeah. It's romanticized. It really is. And that in the end, it doesn't lend it to feeling more real, but it makes it feel like you saw something significant, and that these people who walked the earth and did these things were important and this is why, and it leaves you feeling that way in a very profound way, in a way the Irishman's just like, and the Irishman knows this is what it is. This is part of the philosophy of the movie. It's what was it all for? What's left of me having lived these things and done this stuff? You know, there's that lovely scene between De Niro and the character's daughter at the end of the movie. And she looks at this guy who's hobnobbed with kings and gods, and all she can see is a guy who was a really shitty father. And she just sort of lets him have it on that very human level. Yeah. And that's powerful. So I love The Irishman, but I yearn for the days when we, you know, when we put all this together and we did it for a reason, and and this cinematic magic of it all. Sean Penn, he still acts in movies, but he's like trying to write books and make games and just do other stuff. And Stephen Colbert once on his show was like, because once he came on the show to promote the book that he said a friend of his wrote, that he actually wrote, and Colbert knew that, and he had to play along with him that this was by some other person, and it was absurd. It was one of those things where we all knew they were lying, and we all just kind of had to sit there and politely not say anything. It was really, really crazy. Not as crazy as when Joaquin Phoenix came on, but on that level, you know, where this is fake. And then the movie came, then the book comes out on paperback, and Sean Penn comes back on the show, and now it says Sean Penn on it. And now they have to admit that this whole thing they did before was a sham. It's the point I'm getting at. I'm just saying that's hilarious stuff. It's worth mentioning, even if it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. He asked Penn why books that you pretend you didn't write and then pretend that you did write. And he was like, well, he goes, when we started doing movies, there was something about it. You were immortalized. You know, when we were in the 70s and 80s, when I started acting in front of the camera, that was the thing. You looked back on Jimmy Cagney and Spencer Tracy, these people, and you looked at them and were like, it's captured for all time. Their greatness is like captured for all time. And he said there was something really romantic about that. And now it's just how much content can we fill? And it's like, even when something sneaks through and you do really, really good work on something, you're still in this ocean of content, the likes of which that a person back in 1979 couldn't have conceived of.
Right. Well, even in 1993.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's what I'm saying. When I watched Hoffa this time, and like I said, I like it, or I would have watched it, 10 times throughout the years, but I was taken by just how well made and how well put together a thing was. It was considered pretty good, but sort of a disappointing epic in its day. That is basically how it was taken. And it was also,
I'm sorry, I'm reading that, it was released on the same day A Few Good Men was released.
Yeah.
And so, you have two Nicholson films, and you get flashy Nicholson, you can't handle
the Walsh films too, by the way.
Yeah, two JT Walsh films, but you're getting, two Nicholson two big Nicholson roles. But in one of them, you also get to look at Tom Cruise and Demi Moore. Not Danny DeVito and John C. Reilly. That makes a difference. Prettiness makes a difference. Of course, again, you could say the same damn thing for A Few Good Men. Compare that to a courtroom drama of today, and there's no comparison. A Few Good Men is stunningly well done. It's really, really, really good. And there isn't a comparison. Even Sorkin's own Trial of the Chicago 7, which is fantastic, it doesn't really compare, I have to say. And maybe that's just me. We'll get into that as the show goes on. It's kind of a recurring theme here. Yeah.
Maybe that's just that we're old, and maybe that's that we were in our 20s in the 90s, and that's why we love these things so much. It's very possible. But I really believe there's more to it than that. Sean Penn was kind of the end of the baby boomer generation, and it really resonated what he said. He didn't say it like, "Oh, I'm not going to do movies anymore," but he just kind of like, I've given up on that dream I had, that why we got into this and why this was all worth it is gone from me now. I'm not like it's. And
I think there is also an element, you know, in the way movies are made now, you know, not that I am a film purist by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm not, but you know, when you perform, or when no matter what your job is, there's usually something in some respect that you can point to and say, I did that. You know, I did that. And for people who work in film, whether you're an actor, an editor, director, you know, props, whatever, you have the celluloid. You had that film, the physical film that you could point to and say. Now we don't have that. It's just all, you know, dashes and dots and ones and zeros and bits, and it's all stored digitally. And
I think it's
there
more than
might
that,
be, maybe
too.
there is something to that. There isn't anything that you can really point to and say, yes, this is, you know, I
presumably you can always point to the screen, but I think along with what you're saying, I would add that, because I think you're right to a certain degree. I would add that, you know, you used to see it through the camera lens, or you would see it on set, and you wouldn't see it on film until days later, a week later. You can sit and watch video dailies now immediately. You can edit the film in the other room while they're shooting more takes of the same scene. There used to have to make sure you got it in a way that you don't have to now. You can be pretty reasonably sure you got it right away. And I think that's different. I think that certainty that the thing we have is going to be beautiful and perfect and worth all this effort. And these days, I think you see right away, oh, it's there. Everything's framed right. We got it. It's not that you don't have to do 100 takes of something.
Yeah. I always think of there's this clip from Star Wars, behind the scenes clip of Star Wars that I don't know why I think of it. It sticks in my brain for so many things, but it's this moment where they're on the Millennium Falcon, and I think it's just like they're running from one side of the
they're on the Death Star, and they've just left.
That's what it is.
Trash compactor.
That's what it is.
This thing you're talking about.
And they're going and you hear cut,
and they're just a run by camera, no nothing scene.
And
they've done it 25 times already.
And then they look, and the look on Ford and Hamill and Fisher's face are like, we get it. We get it. We get it. Huh? Yeah. And then you just hear a little.
And you can hear Lucas mumble in the background.
And then they camera. Yeah, and then he's like,
they're like, what? One more. Boom was in camera.
And then they
and we gotta do it again.
Yep, it's that moment of like you said, did we get it? And nowadays it's sort of like, you know, the answer isn't got it. We got that one. It's I got stuff I can edit around.
No, who's Elizabeth, what's her face? Scarlet Witch. What's her name, that actor?
Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah, she did a really funny interview where she's like, for like 3 days I had to like do this and that. And it was just me and this green blanket, and that's it. And I'm just striking poses or whatever. And it's like they made her do 1,000 different ones, you know, 3 of which are in the movie. And just so they would have a ton of choices. Like that's not how you made movies even in 1992. You just couldn't be farting around like that. You absolutely couldn't do it. You had to get everything. There were 100 people. There were all this antique crap. You took all the antennas off of the buildings so that it would look period. And you had to get it done on the night of, or you had to get it done while the sun was setting. There was no adding anything in post, and you weren't really sure you got it until you saw it on film in the editing bay several days later. Or if you were shooting in, you know, Namibia, then you didn't see it until you went back to America. You just had to rely on your editor's telegraph that said, yes, it's here. We have it. So you don't have to do it again. And I really do think that sort of let's seize the moment and make it as perfect as we can mentality is gone from filmmaking, because you just don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. And it makes it easier. And that's not to say making, Avengers Endgame is easy. How could it's this monumental thing. Yeah. But it's easier because we just redo it. Or if you think of something after everyone's gone home, then you just do it digitally. And I think the idea of everything. Yeah.
The idea of what you're shooting in principal photography is so different now because of so much of the movie is now made in post, you're in your post filming operations. Let's
so 3 reasons Hoffa's better than the Irishman, and it does sort of go to other questions of the philosophy of filmmaking that I thought were interesting, and I still think the Irishman's awesome. So
yeah,
there you go.
Okay, so next up on our little grab bag of fun is we're going to talk a little bit about one of the great actors of the late 80s. This was a person this was a performer that a wide variety of film, very, again, not unlike John Cazale, a very narrow, 4 films total in this performer's career,
and it's really only 3, because the 4th he's barely in it. He's like a cameo at the end of his life.
Yeah, and it's so this is and they're 3 very different films. It's quite a range showed in these films, and of course, I mean, you probably have all guessed it at this point, but we are talking about the hybrid dog, Canadian Timberwolf / Alaskan Malamute dog, Jed, from the movies The Thing, The Journey of Natty Gann, and White Fang.
Yeah, so, the titular character in White Fang. Jed is, for my money, the greatest animal performer of all time, and that's saying a lot. Jed appears in White Fang with one of the other greatest animal performers of all time, Bart the Bear, and he faces Bart the Bear down. He's one of the very few animals in the history of animal movies to do such a thing, and it's the two titans facing off is very, very exciting. But we should start with The Thing. He plays a sled dog in The Thing. He's half wolf, half Malamute. Like we said, he was the son of 2 other, a wolf and a dog, who were on different animal preserves. I'm not sure why they were mated together, but that story I haven't been able to find in his biography. But I think it's kind of neat. He was sort of raised in captivity, but Jed was a very aloof performer, and that sort of unshakability is a great part of his character. He's very cautious and aware. If you watch him in The Thing, you can see this. That scene where he did that scene where he's walking slowly through the encampment down in Antarctica, just walking down the hallways, and that bit where he stops and kind of looks. Jed was really hard to shake off of his mark, and at the same time he was sort of hyper aware of every little sound and every little thing happening, so you could get this aware performance out of him, which is one of the hardest things to do with an animal. It's why he was such a good actor and why he's featured more and more in each successive film. I love him in The Thing because he really is a character in it in a way that a lesser performer really wouldn't be. He only, I guess we'll get to that in a bit. We'll get to that when we get to the last film, but it's just worth mentioning that, even though Jed becomes, it turns out he's an alien from another planet who's here to take over humanity by absorbing us all. And imitating us. That ain't dog. That's imitation. That's the great Wilford Brimley line from The Thing. Quentin Tarantino. We're just talking about Colbert. Quentin was just on Colbert just a couple of nights ago talking about how awesome The Thing is. Mm-hmm. Anyone who knows The Thing and knows Reservoir Dogs and certainly his more recent film, what's the Western where they're all stuck in that lodge together?
The Hatred Eight. Or the Hated Eight.
Yeah, Hateful Eight.
Hateful Eight.
Yeah, Hateful Eight. Which, you know, literally has music cues from The Thing. It's wearing it on its sleeve like Quentin does. Quentin does that with confidence. His influences, like he lets you in on it in a ways that it is so brazen and confident that you don't feel like it's a ripoff. You really do feel like it's this awesome other thing inspired by a different awesome thing. And even in Hateful Eight, which I don't love, has that same sense of paranoia. There's a killer among us, and it could be any of us. He says that it's that paranoia in The Thing that works and that makes it so terrifying. But Jed is a key part of that because he just really, really well done. That scene where he's walking down the hall, the scene where they put him in with the other sled dogs. Richard Masur plays a character. He plays the character at the camp that is like in charge of the dogs and has this weird connection with the dogs. He was offered a couple of different roles in that. And when he read the script, he came back to John Carpenter and said, I want to be the guy who's like, you know, takes care of the dogs. And he's like, well, that guy hardly even says anything. And Masur was just like, yeah, I don't know, there's something about him. I think that's interesting. And I think it would be interesting to try and play that connection and stuff. And it you know, like any good director, once they hear that, you need 14 different guys in this. Why not let Richard do whatever he wants? I mean, and he wisely followed that. And that connection between him and that dog is really real too. Yeah. And apparently they formed a real bond, which is something Jed didn't show you the love. You know, he was a total pro.
Yeah.
He didn't go out,
you know,
drinking with the buddies. That he would just go straight home.
No, yeah, he was
take a nap.
Yep. He was a lunch pail performer, man.
Work.
He was a lunch pail performer. He got up in the morning, did his job, went home.
But Richard is one of two people throughout these three movies that the two of them really hit it off and were really friends and recognized each other and you know, in like future years, which I think is very cool because Richard Masur is a really cool character actor. Obviously, The Thing is packed to the rafters with awesome character actors. So that's the whole shebang with that.
Yeah.
Then the next movie he did is 5 years later. We talked a little bit and we didn't include this movie, or maybe we did. Did we include Journey and Addie Gann in our little breeze through the Changing of the Guard, the post Walt Disney film show that we did with Brian?
If it may have gotten mentioned, but we certainly didn't dive into it.
It really is. It's this film, and then the next film was The Little Mermaid, and that really is where the pivot happened, right there, and basically a couple of years apart. And where Little Mermaid is really the foundation of what modern Disney is sort of built on. There's another pivot at some point when Disney just somewhere, like we'll call it when they bought Pixar, I guess.
Yeah.
But here it went from being a really struggling minor studio whose films were keeping it alive and whose theme parks were certainly keeping it alive, but it wasn't providing the conventional magic in a way that was sitting with modern audiences. So in a way, this is the last old school Disney movie, even though it's part of that weird middle chapter that we sort of broke down. Yeah. But it's certainly an absolute throwback, old fashioned story. It's about a girl who's Meredith Salinger in her first ever screen performance, whose father during the Depression gets work and travels from Chicago all the way out to Washington State to be like a lumberjack of some kind. And she, because of her immaturity and because just the brave and brazenness of youth, she just decides to travel the country to find him. She tries to stay in Chicago for a while, but it's a bad happenstance of events that happen that sort of push her out the door. And of course, that's a harrowing thing for a kid of any age to do. And along the way, she makes a couple of key friends. One is with traveling out of work hobo, played by John Cusack, and the other is Jed, this wolf that she comes into encounter with. And Jed's a big part of this story, a much bigger part of Journey and Natty Gann than he is of The Thing. There's several little episodes and adventures. There's a stunning sequence where they're jumping off like a little overhang onto a moving train. You know, it's just very, I mean, it's very photo real and very realistic, and the actors are clearly there doing it. And that's really, really exciting. There's a scene where the wolf gets captured and she tries to save it. But they're traveling companions, and it's I don't know how to explain it, but Journey and Natty Gann is really, really great old school widescreen entertainment, Depression era travel log with a kid at the start of it. Salinger's spectacular in it, although I don't think she's who the story really calls out. I think you can you can push her hair up under a hat, and you can do certain things with her, and she can act the part, but Meredith's not a tomboy. She's a princess. No matter how whatever you try and do, you can't really hide that. That comes through anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know that matters. They saw every kid her age basically alive for this role, and it's acted, really, really great. She has to both be this little kid amongst kids, brawling it out on the streets of Chicago. She's got to do these scenes with this wolf that, well, the show is not about Meredith, it's about Jed after all. So, Jed, it really generous in their scenes together, but he was a bit of a tricky personality on set. So, her having to constantly show comfort with him on screen was a challenge, and they do a really, really good job of it. And then she's got Cusack, who's it's 9 years older than her, and she's got to make out with him at one point, and it does feel kind of weird, but hey, it was the Depression. Find love where you can get it. It helps that the movie plays it's her idea, and he's sort of stunned by it. But so don't get me wrong. There's nothing creepy going on in this story. It's Disney through and through. And there's a great second only to our next film, but there's a great. You got to go back to the wilds. The journey's over. I found my dad, and you found a new pack that you can run with. And man, anytime dog and man have to part from each other on film for the greater good of both, it is a heartbreaking thing. And it's not the same for cats, is it, Joel? It's not the same.
No, it really is not.
It isn't. It just isn't. Sorry, guys. I'm sure there's plenty of cat people out there, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and and here's the deal, cat people. When you're going to tell us, oh no, my cat does that, and then how you turn around and you describe your cat. You describe your cat saying, well, my cat's like a dog. Yeah.
Those are the best kind of cats. I'll agree with that at least. It's great. It's a really, really great movie that I highly recommend. It has a weird bit of trivia. Journey and Natty Gann, the trailer for it was put on every Disney VHS film from about 1987 to 1992. It's literally the most shown trailer in Disney video format of all time. It didn't do well at the box office. It got okay, but lukewarm reviews. People 87, the same critics who were reviewing Dead Ringers and The Fly at the box office didn't know how to review a film like this, honestly. But Disney didn't care, and that's one of the neat things about them, especially from this era. They thought they made a great movie, and they just kept pushing it in every way they could. And if you're of a certain age and you watched it at a certain time, it really did get to you. And it's a really, really good one with a fantastic wolf dog hybrid performance at the center of it. And then the last one is White Fang. White Fang, it's based on the Jack London story. So, you know, all-time outdoorsiness is coming your way. Survival / gold rush story. Directed by Randall Kleiser. We talked a little bit about him when we were talking about I was going to say it wrong. What's the Brooke Shields one where they're stranded on a desert island?
Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, Blue Lagoon. Yeah, I know. I have a movie podcast. I don't know what to say.
Well, you know, sometimes they're right there on your tongue. Yeah.
I don't know. That's why Joel's here. He really fills in the gaps and brings the cat hate in a great way that I'm not able to completely commit to. Randall Kleiser directed Blue Lagoon. This movie's kind of like Blue Lagoon. It's totally different setting, but it does have that. You're out there on your own. You're just stranded in this exotic place kind of feel to it. Randall's most famous for directing Grease, probably, which is sort of the most idiosyncratic of his works. That's really the outlier of the kinds of movies that he made throughout his career. And like we said, Blue Lagoon, despite its scandalous whatever nature and whatever rep it had at the time, when you watch it, it's really this innocent family movie. Honestly, there's virtually nothing really salacious about it at all. At least tonally, it's, you know, you don't feel that when you're watching it, I guess is what I'm saying, even if it has its moments. White Fang, there's a great scene in White Fang. What do they call it? The Stairway to Heaven, or the Stairway to this long mountain pass that you literally had to walk on foot to get into the Klondike to get to where the gold rush was. It's been shown in several movies, one version of it or another, that no better and no more realistic, I think, than in White Fang. That when Ethan Hawke's character, who's come fresh to the Klondike to find his father, who was up here chasing gold, sees it for the first time. It's a stunning shot. And eventually he hooks up with his dad's friend, played by, a career great performance by Klaus Maria Brandois, who's really, really good in it, sort of the old wise sage character in it. And of course, eventually he finds the cabin and they decide to make a go of it. And it's weird because White Fang doesn't really meet up with our heroes right away. He has like this strange, we meet him as a pup and he has this strange sort of parallel story. Yeah. He's like a lead character in a different movie where he's trying to make a go of it as a wolf in the wilderness, where he loses his mother one night in a fight with our heroes, where it's just wolves being wolves and people being people. Nobody did anything wrong, but nevertheless, their destinies are sort of tangled up together in a really interesting way. And eventually James Remar and a bunch of other Alaskan thugs turn White Fang into a dogfighter, where he really loses himself in the dogfighting ring. Dogfighting scenes are really, really tame. It's a Disney movie. It's too bad. It's too bad in a way that they had to be. I get why they are. Nobody wants to see dogs ripping each other's throats out and stuff, but it's a story about how this dog sort of, and through the love of this guy, sort of find each other and finds his way back from this trauma through human connection. And it's sad that the dogfighting scenes aren't more horrific, but they really were careful. This really is an animal-centric film where the animals were treated like kings, and they were very, very careful with the animals. So White Fang is nursed back to health and becomes sort of this pal of Ethan Hawke's character up in the wilderness. And it's this wonderful story of their connection and how they help each other and save each other and stuff. And I really, really love it. And it has another sort of, it has that huge scene where White Fang fights off, doesn't really fight him, but holds his ground against Bart the bear when Bart is getting all territorial. And, if you've ever seen Bart in a movie, he's formidable. on screen when he decides to stand up and roar. It's another great performer who, was a rather cuddly circus bear type of person in real life. But when he had to bring the scariness, he nailed it. And he does so in this film too. But Jed's White Fang holds him off, and another really good one. Like I said, it's hard to pick performer. One. But this is sort of Jed's show, so
well, this is Jed's show. We'll bring up Bart. Bart. We'll talk more about Bart because his filmography is wonderfully diverse as well.
Yeah, even more so probably. He's in a few clinkers too, so that's probably why it's maybe a little diminished compared to Jed's kind of perfect 3 performances. But same scene where there's Ethan's going to go back to San Francisco or whatever, and he's got to make Jed go away. And this one's really, really tough because the way he gets him to go away is he picks up this stick, and the way White Fang has been the way he's become a fierce dog fighter was he was beaten with this stick. And so that image of that guy coming at you, the person that you love, with this thing that's been used to turn you into this killer, it's heartbreaking, and it makes us feel really sad. And that's, of course, if you're Jack London, that's the story, Finney. And you feel horrible, but you feel like you really lived through something. It's a Disney movie, so Ethan changes his mind at the docks and goes back into the wilderness, and White Fang finds him, and they run together and they hug, and the music plays and the movie's over, and you feel really great. But
and then it fades to black, and just after it fades to black, White Fang goes at his jugular for having raised a stick to him.
Joel, don't cheapen this.
And meanwhile, there's a cat over on the side going,
just laughing. Yes. This was my plan
all along. Yes.
All right. Well, Jed really is a wonderful performer, and White Fang really is a powerhouse performance from an animal, I have to say. And I thought we would give him a shout out in today's show, since we had a little, maybe not a whole show's worth of stuff just to talk about Jed, but since we had a little time to talk about these 3 things we're talking about today.
Good old Jed. You know where Jed also would have Jed would have been great in a Merchant Ivory film.
Yeah, he would have been.
Yeah, he would have been fine. And that's kind of where we're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to
Not completely. It's from the same era as the rest of these movies, basically.
We're going to put on our corsets and tie up here. And then we just get this up a little bit and tie. We're going to get our cravats and our pinkies up. Oh, that's delightful. That is a delightful spot of water. Yes, we are going to talk. We're not gonna do all of Merchant Ivory, the producing team or directing team.
It's an interesting thing about Merchant Ivory films. They're really, I mean, we worship them, and when we say the name, we say it with reverence. But if you really look at the whole filmography, it's really hit or miss, and that's true of everybody. It's true of the filmmaker we're going to talk about next week. It's true of everybody. There's only one, John Casale, who's all his movies were perfect, and he was perfect in them. That can only happen when you have a short career, honestly.
Right.
When you just keep doing movies, but we are going to talk today about the pinnacle of that. And the reason it's hard to do a whole show on them is I've only seen a handful of them. Merchant Ivory on home video have been tough. DVD, they were treated pretty well. They had a distribution deal with the great Criterion Collection, which on DVD treated them very well. But when it switched to high definition, there was a fight over money. And as a result, none of their films came out on Blu-ray until just recently. So none of their films have been streaming in high definition since new TVs come out. And this is recent history, but it's still all of recent history. These films have been tough to get a hold of. They're now being distributed exclusively by Cohen Media, who's restoring them uh, just amazingly well. They had
Yeah.
a bit of a flub with their Howard's End Blu-ray, but they fixed it, and it's really amazing to look at. And now that seems to be changing, and it seems like a great time to reevaluate them. But there's still a bunch of these I haven't seen, and it's hard to go back and see them, and it's hard to just do a best of show about only their period dramas, because that's not only what they did.
Right.
But we are going to talk about two of the very best ones, and we're going to talk about, strangely, two of the only ones. The only two, I actually went through all of them and made sure I could say this, the only two films of theirs shot in scope. And by that metric, I think these are the only two films of theirs whose scope, not in the literal sense, but in the metaphorical sense, is like really broad in a thematic sort of way. They're intimate stories of human beings, like all of their best stuff are, but there's something much more to both of them. And I think that the big, long widescreen image really serves them both really, really well. And that's part of what I love about them. But Joel, I'll let you, I've sort of let the cat out of the bag, but I'll let you say which two we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. We are going to, we're narrowing the scope. We are going to be talking about two films. Both films star Sir Anthony Hopkins, and I don't think she's been, what honors has she received yet in her amazing career? Emma Thompson is she's Dame Emma Thompson. Yeah. So we have Sir Anthony Hopkins and Dame Emma Thompson. And
Anthony Hopkins obviously had been kicking around for decades before 1992, but Emma was pretty much fresh on the scene at that time.
I mean, she was really only known, she was known for being in her husband at the time, his films, Kenneth Branagh's films. Henry V, Dead Again, Peter's Friends, had Much Ado come out by that time. But yeah, and then she had done some comedies, and she was a well-known live performer as well as sketch performer in England, very well thought of. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, let's put Emma Thompson in this, and she and Anthony Hopkins, they clearly got it. They understood the assignment, and
we talked about Emma in the Jane Austen episode, and how she was sort of plucked out of being a comedian on TV to adapt Sense and Sensibility, which she was already doing at this point. But the film that made her a big star was the first film we're going to talk about, was Howard's End. She won the Oscar for Best Actress in it. She won, I believe she was one of the only, I think there's only two in the history of anything who won every major acting award given during this award cycle for this role. She won 18 separate awards for it, BAFTA, Golden Globe, everything.
Yeah.
And that part of that is 1992, and Hoffa barely has a woman in it. So it was a different era. If you stood up and gave a performance like this in a story that centered around it wasn't so rare that it never happened, but it was a much smaller category than the actor category. Mm-hmm. That's just part of the misbalanced, story of Hollywood. We don't need to tell you guys. You've been watching movies all this time, same as us. But still, it's still worthy of all those awards. She's stunning in this film.
Yeah, she really is.
I mean, really, 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 really good. And Hopkins too. It's funny how these films parallel each other, and they're easy to compare, even though they're kind of totally different stories. The relationships and the lessons of the thing are kind of the same. And it's something that the great authors that wrote in the time periods that these things take place, that's what Howard's End certainly is. It's a morality tale from the period. Mm-hmm. Remains of the Day, the second film we're going to talk about, is different. It was written by a Japanese author, I want to say.
Yep,
Am I right about that?
Kazuo Ishiguro is
Who really
indeed
didn't know much about
Japanese.
how, and this is why whenever, if you're ever sitting in a writing class and the writing, if the writing teacher tells you to only write what you know about, then you can just I it's up to you, of course. You paid for the class, but my advice to you is take that moment, stand up, and just stare him down for a second. Make sure he knows it's his fault you're leaving. Walk right to the door and slam it shut on your way out. Because it's the dumbest thing to say. Use your imagination. Write what you know is it's important, actually. It's an important lesson in writing. But it's second. It's a distant second to using your imagination and letting it be everything. That's the most important thing that you can do. And I know that literature in particular is full of, like, Little Women. You know, she didn't write anything worth a damn till she wrote what she knew. I get it. And I get why that's important, but
just write what you know. And also make sure you know a lot about a lot of things.
Well, and don't let that rule stop you from telling. This is the case in point. Remains of the Day broke the millions of hearts. The book first, and then the movie, and it couldn't have done that if this writer sitting in Japan didn't decide, hey, I got an idea for this, I'm just gonna do it. That's brave. That's what writing's supposed to be. So I just tip of the hat to that. Didn't really know. Like us, didn't really know what the life of an English manor was, or you had to work all that out, interview people and read about it and figure it out, and then try and bring as much authenticity to the stories they could. But it was more important that the core lesson of the thing, and that these characters lived on screen in a believable way. And that's what's great. Howard's End's a little more formal because it really is a piece of its era.
Yeah.
But in that way, it's the more revolutionary of the two things. It's the more kind of amazing of the two things, because it really is a writer. Who's the novelist? The name slipping.
E.M. Forster. Yeah, E.M.
Forster. Yeah, well, novelist criticizing something that's much, much closer to home and doing it in such a thoughtful and empathetic way as it's done in this story. Because Howard's End's just a calamity, man. It's all it is it's if it didn't have tragedy at the core of it, it would be the goofiest, funniest, unluckiest story of all time. Because the coincidences and the bad luck that gets set upon these people from all different classes, or at least three distinct classes. I mean, that's maybe more important. It's not like there was a gray scale. You really were poor, or you were almost rich and just getting by, or you were super rich and didn't have a care in the world. And that's it. And that middle group was this very, very small thing. That was really just a group, in this case, of women who were living off of previous generations' money.
Yeah.
And not really able to fend for themselves. A really rich, owning several estates sort of crew, the Wilcoxes, the Schlegels are the other group we're talking, and of course, the Basts.
The Basts
are poor, and the poor are poor, and one feels sorry for them, but there it is a great line that Anthony Hopkins has in Howard's End. One should never feel sentimental about the poor.
Yep.
And Helena Bonham Carter plays this very modern, bleeding heart who does care about the poor, cares about everything, cares passionately about everything. It's a great role for Helen. She's just fantastic in it. She's sort of the catalyst. She sticks her nose in other people's business. She's not scared to do that, and she does it because she cares. And it's funny because Emma really isn't this in real life. We've talked about this, but she does so well at this on screen in Carrington and Sense and Sensibility, and certainly in Howard's End, as this sort of middle, I'm going to juggle all this and make this all work out. I'm going to be the sensible one. I'm going to find a way, hopefully, where everybody can be happy. There's a brilliant scene, and it's not considered one of the big scenes because it's not very dramatic, but they're trying to help this guy that they met who's had terrible luck.
Yeah.
And she, Emma's character basically says to her sister, look, I'll talk to my husband at a certain point. I guess we should start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Howard's End. It's not exactly in the country, but it's definitely not in the city, says one of the characters, or definitely not in town, as they would say.
Yeah.
So it's this house sort of just outside of town. It's a small, easy, couple-hour train trip away. The very first time we see it, we see Vanessa Redgrave, who's amazing in this film. She's only in it for a little bit. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, major spoilers for both of these. So if you haven't seen these, this might not be just see them.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what you want from us.
Because they're too lovely.
Them. They're like a 10 and 9-star film out of 10 respectively. They are really, really, really good.
Let's not let's I guess not caveat it, but let's macro talk this thing. These are period pieces. These are costume dramas, but they're incredibly accessible. They're, they're to watch for a modern viewer. It's not, you're not like, what are they saying or what do they mean? There's, and it's all that manner. It's a manner. This is a manner piece.
They are, in my opinion, a huge step toward that from their previous period pieces, which were all great. In my opinion, starting with the Europeans and the Bostonians, which are fantastic movies. And then really solidifying the sort of art form of it with Room with a View and Morris, which are great, but those are a little tricky. Room with a View in particular, I think is a movie that everybody really, really likes it, and for good reason. But unlike Howard's End isn't like that. It really is down here with you and is communicating with you in a very, it's not simple way. You do have to understand the sort of the manners of the time.
Yeah.
But it's much more accessible emotionally than I think
you got to pay attention.
Which is
you got to pay attention, but it's not. These are not hard movies to watch. You're not, they're not quite enjoyable. They're quite enjoyable, and they're beautiful, both beautiful to look at, which we'll talk more about later. But yeah, you're right. Howard's End. It's
his country home that's at the center of everything. Mrs. Schlegel or Miss Schlegel befriends Vanessa Redgrave's character, the matron of this Wilcox,
the Wilcox family.
It's actually very complicated. To break down the plot of Howard's End is going to be impossible because that would be the whole show.
I did just do it for my wife. I did just sort of do it for my wife because I just watched
See if you can do it for us, because to me.
All right, here we go. Okay, so you have
what you have to understand. Go ahead.
And well, now I was going to launch into it. Now there's a lot I'm going to be leaving out, but I'm going to big picture this thing. You have the Wilcoxes who are way up here. You have the Schlegels who are, that below them. And then you have the Bests and the Mrs. Emma Thompson, Margaret Schlegel befriends Ruth Wilcox. And as Ruth, and they're really good friends. And as, again, spoiler alert, as Ruth is passing away, one of her final acts that she does, and no one is there to see it, she scrawls on a piece of paper and pencil. She writes, Margaret Schlegel, give Howard's End to Margaret Schlegel. So that note is passed on to the patriarch of the family, Henry
Wilcox. There's a great
Wilcox.
scene too. Before you move on from that, you're doing a good job, by the way. Yep. But there's a great scene where the family's sitting around bickering about whether they should honor this or not.
And so he announces
one of
this
his
to
kids
the kids
is like, he's like, we can't be expected to do that, and there's no better actor that ever lived, for all the Oscar-winning Hannibal Lecter-ness. What Hopkins is really, really great at is this understated, especially if he's smoking for some reason. I don't know why.
Yep.
But he's like, yes, I don't think anyone's arguing that this is legally binding.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, the question is, do we honor this final wish or do we take it as something where she was dying and sort of out of her mind a little bit? And of course, the family decides to burn it and pretend that it never existed.
And that's again, Anthony Hopkins is just, I was like, well, do we do this? He's very calm throughout the whole thing. It's the kids who are like, no, we can't do this. They can't give it to them. They're weird and blah, blah, blah. So, so then we cut to a few months.
German.
So then we cut to a few months later, and the Schlegels, who had no idea any of this had even happened, they're living their lives. They
had some idea. You skipped an important part, which was that Helena Bonham Carter, the younger Miss Schlegel, got engaged to one of the Wilcoxes while staying out at Harwood's End.
Yeah, very briefly.
At the end of their weekend together, they got unengaged, and
they were like, that probably was not wise. Let's move on.
Well, and in a way, as far as engagements and unengagements go in this period, this was one of the most harmless ones that you'll ever find in movies. But it is the thing that connected these families in the first place, who were otherwise unconnected, and it does continue to haunt them to some degree.
And it leads. It's why Emma Thompson's character, why Margaret Schlegel came back to befriend Vanessa Redgrave, to say, look, everything happened so weird, and so sorry that all happened. And then they just become friends because they're two women of similar,
they're kindred spirits,
very different.
Very clearly,
they're kindred spirits, but very different people, and they're fascinated by each other, and they become fast friends. And then so cut to a few months later. While the Wilcoxes are living their lives, getting married, owning things, and being super rich, the Schlegels have befriended, by a mistake of the younger Miss Schlegel taking the wrong umbrella at a symposium. They meet Mr. Leonard Bast, who is a lowly clerk at a insurance
Who's the
firm.
actor that plays Leonard Bast? He's great. He's not in everything.
Yeah, he is Samuel West.
Good actor.
Yeah, Sam. Yeah, very, very good. And he, and
he's a bit of a hothead.
Yeah, and he's like, and he follows her back to her London, the London house that they live in, and saying, "You have my umbrella. You have my umbrella." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm terribly sorry." And they invite him in for tea and get to know him, and they're like, "Oh, he's so nice. He's a really nice guy." And Margaret's like, "Here, have my." Emma Thompson's like, "If there's any, please call again. Here's my card," and blah blah blah. And he goes back home, and he lives in a very
squalor.
rundown, and squalor with
a formal or call girl that he married,
that he's promised to marry when he turns,
basically.
when he promises to marry when he turns 21, eventually does marry her. And then we jump forward in time again, and
she's sweet enough, but as much as Leonard can come into their home, and even though he's temperamental and all these things, can feel like he belongs there, he is engaged to marry somebody who cannot walk even for a moment amongst the rest of the people in this story. And it's significant that she's like that. And so it's worth mentioning. That's all I'm saying.
So the now single Mr. Wilcox, his wife having passed away, and a sufficient time of mourning having passed, meets up again with Miss Schlegel, the elder Miss Schlegel, Emma Thompson, and they strike up a conversation. They're having a very interesting time. Long story short, they have a couple dinners. Next thing you know, he's saying, "Would you consent to be my wife?" While all of this is
he's helping them find a new home in London because they need it, and as they're walking through this rather palatial, very ornate, place they found. He's
30-foot ceilings,
kind of an amazing stage scene. He's up on the top of these stairs, and she's down on the landing at the bottom of them, and his stuttery sort of can't quite bring himself to ask her to marry him. Speech is stunningly vulnerable and human, and he gets to the end of it, and he says, "Perhaps I should have sent a letter."
Yep. Perhaps I should have put this in a letter.
Of course, yes, you should. If this is how you were going to ask, yes, you should have. But you can tell just from the look on her face, you can tell she's she's going to say yes to him. We all kind of know that. We don't know it because their love on screen has been so, or their chemistry has been so hot and heavy. Emma tells us that this is wonderful that she's hearing this. And she says, no, rather it is I that will send a letter to you.
Yeah.
So she's not going to even answer him right now, but she does walk up the stairs to him and she gives him a kiss, which she would absolutely never do if she wasn't going to say yes. Not just because you wouldn't kiss somebody you were going to say no to, but you just wouldn't kiss somebody you were not engaged to, period, ever.
Correct.
If you were someone of her station.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene. It really is a beautiful scene. And you're just like, okay, it's going to work out between these two kids somehow.
And then meanwhile, Mr. Leonard Bast continues sort of coming in and out of the Schlegel women's lives in a very, not in a torrid way or anything. It's just like, oh, Mr. Bast, great to see you again. Goodness, how are things? And Mr. Bast is working as a clerk, and through some bad advice, it comes down that the women give Mr. Bast the advice, hey, you should probably leave. Mr. Wilcox.
The Porphyrion. I love that it's called
the Porphyrion.
That's
Mr. Wilcox tells the Schlegel women that that place is going under. That's not going to be around. And
best find another job while he still has a job, because it would be easier for him to get employed that way. It sounds like good advice.
Yeah. And it turns out not to be great advice. Things continue to go south for the Bast family. And meanwhile, he
does get another job someplace else where he gets in on the ground level
and less money.
That firm, when they're downscaling, they fire him not because he did a bad job, but because last one in, first one's out.
Yep. So
and now he really is out of work. He's
going around trying to find work.
22 years old, which is too old to not have a job and be looking for one.
And it
brings us to this scene where Emma goes to she basically tells her sister, Helena Bonham Carter's character, says, yes, we'll try and help Leonard. We will, but you have to let me do it my own way. You have to. You can't just. She's like, well, your husband, your fiance practically owes him a job now, given what's gone down here. And she agrees, but she's like, that can't be like that. Y'all got to leave your young passion at the door and let me finesse this. And the way she does it is so great. I don't know how to say it. That scene between the two of them, again, where the movie's so great because it's full of these calamitous bad coincidences and poor events. But there's this scene where it's not that she tricks him. She's honest with him. She brings it all to the fore. It's just the manner in which she asks. Hopkins is great in that he wants to help and he wants to be the hero, and she's got him to the point where he's going to feel really good about doing the right thing. So it's all in this. It leads in this great. He's like, no, I can't be giving every protege of yours a job. You understand this is a one-time thing.
Yeah,
and she's like, of course. And they all agree. And as soon as that scene happens and we're all about to live happily ever after, they walk out into this wedding reception that is taking place. And Anthony Hopkins' character sees Mrs. Bast, who's just hanging out, chowing down and drinking
because
wine.
Of course, Helena Bonham Carter, Miss Schlegel is so, again, because she's like, we got to do this, and she brings this poor destitute couple to this lavish wedding reception. Former prostitute.
Not to be judgmental, but it's important. Former prostitute. And wouldn't you know it, Anthony Hopkins and her had a former sort of John call girl relationship.
Yep, and
she recognizes him, and because she's had too much wedding punch, she's calling him by his first name, and she's making this huge scene at this wedding reception. And of course, that brings everything crumbling to dust. No job for Mrs. Bast. No
job for Mr. Bast.
At least temporarily, the marriage between our two heroes is called off. Yep. Everything just goes straight to hell. Hopkins is so shamed by this event, and really shamed by the fact that this woman that he loves has found out that he had this weird affair when he was with Vanessa Redgrave's character. And he just thinks he's been outed as this beastly, terrible, unforgivable.
Initially thinking that was her plan all along.
Yeah, well, exactly, to shame him, to get out of the engagement.
This was your plan. So this was your that I love that. And she's like, no, what? No.
Emma's so great in the following scene. She's like, after things have calmed down again, she's a very smart, really gets the lay of the land and feels out every situation and finesses it. She's really at the heart. She's really all these people in the story's only hope for happiness. It's very clear by the time the story's over that no matter what happens, and some tragic things do happen, I think we can stop the plot here. We don't have to ruin the whole end of the story.
I want to stop right now.
But you can see where we're at. We're at this point where stuff is falling apart. Emma's response to it, and give her the Oscar, give her everything, give her all 18 awards, was, well, that needn't concern us, she says to him. And Hopkins' reaction to that line is, because he really does think it was a plot to bring the thing down.
Yeah. And
so he's happy to be. She's there's nothing to forgive.
There's nothing to forgive. Well, she's like, I forgive you. She does say, I forgive you this. But there's nothing
she
to
has
forgive.
to say that because he's ashamed of it.
He's like, the
tone of the thing is, this is just, you were just a guy sleeping with a hooker a little while. Whatever. Like that doesn't have to ruin everything on our lives.
Before we ever really even knew each other.
But their lives face even more harrowing challenges.
It keeps
going.
It
really does keep going wrong.
It is
and
all over the place, and
it really does take a survivor and a person with an open heart to get them through what happens. And to the degree that she can, Emma's character really does set everything right for all of these people, for the obnoxious Wilcox kids as much as she can, for her illegitimate nephew, for, it doesn't work out for the Basts. Sorry, spoiler alert.
Yeah, it still sucks to be poor.
Never could really.
Yep.
It sucks to be poor, and that has to land. You know what I mean? It really does. It's not a thing that you can defeat with any bit of hustle. You need help. It takes a community. We've been sold, especially as Americans, but it's as old a story as the wind, that if you just work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you alone, your rugged individualism will win the day. And of course, it can't. Yep. Nobody can fend for themselves in the world. You need a community. You need a family. You need other people to help you in numerous times throughout life. And Emma's character represents that. And the Basts represent that struggle and the hopelessness of it. And Hopkins represents this way of thinking where he has to be just bitch slapped into understanding that and having that lesson be real. And it shatters him all to pieces. And he's fortunate that he has someone there who's willing to pick his pieces up and put his family back together again. And yet, despite the fact that they all represent these amazing things and these incredible struggles of these times, they're such believable individual people that even the worst of which you want to spend more time with, because you grow to understand them and empathize with them so thoroughly. And I really think our next movie is even easier, because it's just so easy to understand where these people are coming from and what their struggles are in a much more linear way. The more I watch Howard's End, and it's the plot of the novel that is so tiptoed through the movie in such a graceful and incredible way, in the screenwriting and in the direction by Ivory. He's just one of the best directors of our time.
Unless it
lands harder every time I see it.
Yeah, and let's give Ruth Prower Jabvala. She's the one who adapted
both of these.
All these, and works with them a lot. Worked with Merchant and Ivory a lot. And I'm not going to ruin the ending, but just if you haven't seen it and you're going to watch it, which I cannot recommend enough, and it is available on Netflix and it looks gorgeous.
Or if you saw it back in the day because you watched all the Oscar movies or whatever, and it felt like a bit of a chore, revisit it. I highly recommend that because as you mature, these more mature stories really do hit you in a different way. And it certainly does to me every time I watch it.
The ending and the way the movie ends, like literally the last line of the film, is so understated and is so wonderfully played. I cackled out loud out of joy of going, I love just of that choice of that's how, because that's exactly how you end this story. It's
one of the best last lines in all of movies. It's so good,
so much. Oh my god. So I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to, but just know as you're watching it, I think that the way this thing ends was just chef's kiss. Mwah.
It's not frankly Scarlet, I don't give a damn, but it's because it's not a punctuation. It has a dot at the end. It is, but it's absolutely what Joel's saying is really
it is that type of last line that big boom that you would expect out of an Edwardian costume drama. It is that's how, frankly, Scarlet, I don't give a damn would exist in an E.M. Forster novel. It's that moment, and you're right. It isn't a period or it isn't an exclamation point. It's a
no, not at all. Not at all. And it wouldn't be as great if it were. It is partly because of, like you said, its understatedness. That's
so much fun. The next film.
It's someday when you catch us and you've seen it or you want to talk more about it, we'll talk about that line. We could talk about it. It's what's another thing that's so great about it. You could talk about it. It really is the thing. You could talk about it forever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The answer to the question that's asked at the end of that film it's a 2-hour discussion of itself. And that just shows you how great the writing is and how great the filmmaking is and how great that performance of the line reading is perfect.
It really is. Oh, it's so good. All right. So the yin to the yang of Howard's End, the other side of the coin of Howard's End is The Remains of the Day. And
came out the very next year.
Again, with
Remains of the Day was helped a lot, but that it was in pre-production with several other filmmakers and had been almost ready to go a couple of times throughout the years. So that when Merchant Ivory picked it up from Mike Nichols and I don't remember who else at the time, is that right? Mike Nichols, I believe that's right.
Yeah.
And
it's scripted by Harold Pinter.
Right. So it wasn't ready to go. It needed their treatment, but it from a movie studio standpoint, they didn't take a bunch of executives convincing or budgeting or any of that. All that was kind of sort of in place for it multiple times. So all they really needed to do was to make it their own. They brought in their resident screenwriter, Joel just mentioned. They kept a lot of what Pinter wrote, but Pinter didn't like it, the fact that he suddenly wasn't the only adaptation person. He had his name taken off of it, but a lot of him is still sort of in there. And they had this at this point, they had this sort of traveling period piece cast of rogue characters that they'd done all these movies with, and they just plugged them into the thing. Christopher Reeve, Emma Thompson, obviously Anthony Hopkins, Hugh Grant. These are all Merchant Ivory veterans at this point. And James Fox, I believe he's new. He's cast perfectly. It's Lord Darlington. Is that his name?
Yes.
Darlington Manor.
Yes, Darlington Hall.
Anthony Hopkins plays the main butler at Darlington Hall out in the English countryside. Lord Darlington presides over it, and he he's the consummate English servant. You know, Hopkins actually trained under Princess Elizabeth's, at that point, recently retired butler, who'd been her butler for forever, for most of her life. And he researched with him and worked with him, and he's got one of the, I don't know that this came up in their training, but he's got one of these great quotes ever. He was asked, what does it take to be sort of the perfect butler? And he goes, well, it's really quite simple. One must make the room more empty by one's very presence. It really is as simple as that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how Hopkins pulls off both the pure emptiness. This guy is called upon to demonstrate his emptiness constantly throughout the film, and yet how rich and again empathetic a character that he is in the end. It really isn't a role just anyone could do. It's really, really difficult to pull off both tricks, you know. Whereas Thompson, who didn't get a bunch of Oscar nominations for this sort of slightly more beloved film, because she's really got it a little easier. She's not negotiating. She gets to sort of play the person of passion, and she gets to wear it on her sleeve. And it really is the tug and pull between those two approaches to lives, between this butler and this housekeeper. And it's all set in the backdrop leading up to World War II, where Lord Darlington, and it's sort of unfair, we can look back in history and see him as what's one of the characters says in great, Darlington, wasn't he one of the fellows that got us into the war due to the appeasement? And Darlington is a fictional character, but he is played as like one of these high up old school English money guys who really didn't want another war in Europe. And that, when we look at that now in the face of the Nazi atrocities, most of which were still not really known, but a few of which were, it's impossible to sympathize with England's take or Chamberlain's take or Peace in Our Time. All of that seems ridiculous. That one character says it in it. They've ignored or broken every treaty that we've had with them. Why would we expect them not to keep doing that? You can't have appeasement. Christopher Reeve, in a really brilliant, I don't know whose idea was, we'll give what's her face the credit, the screenwriter, but in a brilliant adaptation from the novel, Reeve plays this very anti-Nazi senator who was called to these secret meetings. And they also double cast him. It's not double casting because this is the same character in the movie, but they take two characters and combine them into one. He also plays the other aristocrat who at the end of the film sort of buys the manor because he's sort of in love with it in the English lifestyle.
It's the same guy, same character.
Right, but it's two different characters in the book is what I'm saying.
They make this congressman. Yeah, this congressman.
The movie makes the characters the same,
of everything.
And it's so powerful a choice, and it's so beautiful way that it bookends. And Reeve, in one of his final sort of performances as a person, you know, not in a wheelchair and not with a severe spinal injury, gives one of his best performances of his career in it. Yeah. And Hugh Grant also, in a very small role, is absolutely fantastic in it. It's a stunning film. We were talking about it. Joel said it's, you know, I looked it up, and this is the word used a lot. It's about unrequited love, but it isn't about unrequited love. It's about love that is never expressed. It's about love that's given every opportunity, given every opportunity to be shared and to be consummated, and it isn't because of this sort of stringent, strict adherence to the rules of the day, and that even go beyond those into them being the very sort of cage that is the philosophy of your life that this character Anthony Hopkins has. And when he's ready to express those, he's given a heartbreaking, just an absolutely, I've seen this movie like 10 times. I just watched it yesterday, And I just wept at the end of the movie. I can't explain it. I'm a little emotional, but I'm not telling you, I don't break down and cry. Yeah, Megan Levy a little bit. Okay. So I'm kind of a pussy, but I just don't, the profundity of it. It's not that so much that the guy's given, it's not so much that he misses his chance. It's that he believes he's been given a second chance. And in every way he can muster, and it's not a bold gesture, but in every way he can muster, he attempts to seize that. And because of circumstances, it's taken away from him. And I don't think we need to talk about what the circumstances are, but it just, things conspire against him and he never, we feel his heartbreak, but it's Emma, actually, of all people, on the trolley riding away from him on the bus.
Yep.
Who expresses it for us. Yeah. She understands, she gets what's happening here. They don't ever talk about it, but she understands what's happening. And she knows that she had to break his heart to his face at long last. And she's heartbroken by having to be obliged to do that.
Yeah.
And it's stunning. It's just one of the most stunning things in all the movies. And you have to have lived through it with them to feel it. And I sort of skipped to the end there and ruined the nuances of the thing, but
no, there's all these moments. I mean, it's
a tremendously nuanced film. Really,
the impact
really,
the movie
good.
had on me, for years, and still actually to this day, it's like if I'm feeling, I'll put it emotionally compromised, whether I'm sad or whether I'm really frustrated or my mind is elsewhere, but it is certainly not where my mind is certainly not where I am at. I find myself doing the Anthony Hopkins from Remains of the Day, where he's just like, and then somebody will be like, Joe, you okay? And I'll be like, no, I'm just a bit tired. And because that is enough for people to go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, well, take care of yourself. Fuck up. And he and he does that, and the moments where those moments, there are a few of those moments in Remains of the Day, and it's you're right. It is that absolute adherence at all costs to one's place and one's purpose for Anthony Hopkins' character.
But he's a character who can and finds a way. There's great scene when his car breaks down on the road and he sort of interacts with all these guys where he's able to stay loyal. It's hard for him, but he's able to stay loyal to who he's been and who he was and who he served.
Yeah.
And still gain greater perspective. He's a character that's capable of wisdom and he's got it all in him to have these things, that he wants and stuff. And that's why it's hard. It maybe just takes him a while. And he is so incredibly knowledgeable and so smart about the things he needs to be knowledgeable and smart about.
There's a few moments throughout it where they're like, well, Mr. Stevens, what do you think? Like, and he'll just be like,
that scene's not an innocuous scene though at all. The scene
no.
Where that guy asks
but it happens a couple
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, people ask him throughout, and he always has this quick, smart, clever, non-answer answer. But there's a scene where he really is drilled into 3 times, and the rich guy uses as an excuse for why the other classes, the servants and workers, shouldn't be allowed to have a say in the discussion because of his refusal to join in on a topic where it absolutely isn't his place to express it. And that character and us, the guy asking the questions doesn't get it. Even Lord Darlington gets it. He doesn't stand up for his servant, but he's the most ignorant, wrong-headed guy in the movie, and even he gets what the scene was and the horror of it. And I love that scene for that reason. We kind of should leave it there because I kind of got to the ending, but it's It's really a wonderful movie.
Yeah,
Peter Vaughn as Hopkins' father, Lena Headey and Ben Whishaw in the two very early roles. I believe it's Ben's first role.
It's Ben Chaplin.
Ben Chaplin.
Yeah, Ben Chaplin.
Yeah, I get the British Bens mixed up.
Yeah,
Sorry, Ben Chaplin. Yeah. Either way, his debut. It's like you'd expect. It's just full of great people doing fantastic work. Michael Lonsdale.
Yeah. I mean, Peter Vaughn playing the senior.
Special shout out to him because he's
and there's and
playing the old about to die guy for 20 years. He's not with us anymore, but he hung in there a long time after Howard's End.
One of the things one of the staple shots that is in like every Merchant Ivory film, it is the pullback through the British glass, the British, the not perfectly, and so you get these distortions as the camera moves, and whether
but I can't stress enough
person, whether it's on a building, it's
the distorted glass.
The distorted glass shot is my favorite.
It really is
my favorite shots in that.
And these films are, like I said, I can't stress enough how the widescreen images, the big camera lenses, they're both shot in Super 35. I think the only person mastered Super 35 more than James Ivory and his cinematographers are James Cameron, who's a master of that. Otherwise, that film format has brought directors like Ridley Scott and others down from a visual aspect. It actually, even these are the only two films shot this way. All the rest of them are kind of old school, spherical 1:6:6 aspect ratio films, the James Ivory films. These two are widescreen extravaganzas, and that's great because their themes can't be contained by a square image. They really are larger than the story themselves, and it gives the story a room to breathe and gives them a sense of visual grandeur that I think are important for both stories. And I love that about them as much. And that shot that Joel's talking about that happens to one degree or another in several of these is never more profound or useful or beautiful than it is at the end of Remains of the Day or near the end of Remains of the Day. It's stunning. And I love the distorted glass, because I don't really think about it that way, but it's true. It's the best glass you can get, but it's still kind of glass of that era. It's not perfect. It's, you know what I mean? It looks good from a distance, but when you're up close to it, it makes everything sort of blurry and slightly out of shape. And that says something. And we love these movies. It's very cool.
All right. So keeping in the spirit, before we end, I know we've been talking for a while. Let's just do a couple very quick sort of looking back through the lens of Merchant Ivory films. Let us have some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes.
Nice.
So let's see, hot take number one. So this kind of goes into these silly modern movies and these kids with all of their things.
It's crazy kids.
Yeah, modern movies, and there are obviously some exceptions, but I like this. The way the way movies are prioritized in terms of what is important from a production and storytelling, not storytelling, but from a like, as you're sitting down to create a movie, the amount of attention paid to the aspects of a film. This is at Lunar Decade on Twitter, says that the priorities given to modern movies is the setting first, character design second, the story is third, and the message of the story is fourth. So that's the hot take, is that what it looks like and what the people look like in it are the top two priorities in modern movies.
I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know how to say. I'm not sure how to answer that. I believe I get kind of what you're saying. It is. I don't know that the setting is first. I really don't think that at all.
Okay.
I think that comes out of concern for telling a new, different kind of story. And I think the challenge of the Marvel Extended Universe and the challenge of these very serialized things is how do we tell the exact same story again, but different? And setting is definitely a way to make it different. So I get why he's kind of putting those out front. And the way characters look is something we're obsessed about right now. Like what's his face with his teeth there, Sonic Hedgehog. And,
right.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but it really is like, people are obsessed with that. Remember the reaction to seeing, the fresh out of the lamp version of Will Smith and Aladdin, and everyone just freaked at it. And of course he doesn't spend the whole movie like that. That's for fun and for effect. Also, he could have spent the whole movie like that. Would that have been a wrong choice? I mean, it would have been a more loyal adaptation of what the thing was in the first place. This guy really was this big blue shape-shifting genie. So we shouldn't have been shocked to see that anyway. And yet we want to see these things. We capture them in like still photographs. We like to mock them, define them, get all that out of the way just ages before we've even seen the movie. I think Aladdin's kind of a crappy movie, but it's not an evil, badly bad, cynical movie per se. It's not great. It's not very good. Yeah, it's just not very good in a bummer sort of way, because you feel like, gosh, with just a little bit of care taken to one of these lesser priorities, they seem to have all the tools they needed to make it really good. So you feel like it's the lost opportunity.
Yeah.
At the same time, you still have, if you liked it in the first place, you still have the old Aladdin. But the setting, I get it, but that's really that comes out of, like the Eternals and the Chinese one. I can't remember the name of it. The Marvel film that just came out.
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Which is still, even as that one's got a great reputation, Eternal's got sort of a horrible one, but they're both still the same kind of thing, where one version of the let's do it again, the same but different, worked, and one version of let's do it the same again but different didn't really work. And the reasons are, the devil is in the details there, but the game is something like what the person who made this hot take is saying, which is, you are assembling the same story with different elements again and again and again and again. And you are selling us the same story over and over. And I mean, I could, if I really wanted to exaggerate, I'd just say the word over and over and over and over again for the next minute. And I still wouldn't get to the amount of times that these same sort of dull templates have been filled. That's not to say that, Harry Potter or whatever is that much more genius, but I think by comparison, it kind of is, because it is concerned with that thing that was last on the list, the theme and the actual
message,
character. Like, that stuff is up front and important. And because it's important to somebody wherever down the chain, even if it's all the way down to the novelist, who in this case is a producer, it is important to somebody. I think in a thing like Age of Ultron, not even really there. It's not completely not there. Because I don't think any decent storytellers can really, you can't just make something absent any sort of theme. Like, to do that, you'd almost have to be trying to do that. You know what I mean? There's certainly no passion or greater meaning behind what you're seeing. And that's why I've lamented these, because I think we live in a time period of great meaning. And I think our entertainment has become very little more than stuff where we can, and this is important. It's not that this isn't important, but it's become little more than just a chance to escape into something else entirely different. It doesn't really reflect the things that we're going through in the world right now. And the art that does is ugly and tough to sit through, because it's frankly an ugly, tough to get through time in the world, and
Mhm.
especially in our country, I think. And that's hard. I don't know how to rectify those things, but I really do wish the gulf between them right now. I've just never seen it like this before, where it's so they're so far apart. And I wish they would come back together a little more.
That might actually be the more accurate way to describe that. It's not like this is the order. It's just the things that are being prioritized so much more than these other things. It's that gulf between the two.
Well, and it's the audiences are getting what they deserve to a certain degree, that they're the ones that are obsessing over the top or the earlier things on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's always been thus. You know, if you wanted to get some sort of greater theme or some sort of message into the Poseidon adventure, you, the artist, had to put it there, because the audience didn't give a crap if it's there or not.
Yeah.
It made your movie better because you had one, and because the movie tells it. It makes the movie much, much better. But do we recognize that, and do we praise it for that necessarily? I don't think so. And so it's on the artist ultimately to do those things in spite of what the audience wants, and to see if you can't have it both ways, to make the bigger, more corporatized Hollywood stuff they're shilling out these days more meaningful. That's not that it's unmeaningful, but we are going through a tricky time, you know. Even Dune, which was wonderful and substantive in a way, you know, that Thor: The Dark World or something isn't. It's still still feels like a world away, truly, in every way, from our world or from the things that we go through. And so I don't know. I'm looking for that meaning somewhere, and I haven't seen it in anything really huge for quite a long time. Even Christopher Nolan movies, which are very, very clever, are puzzles, really. They're not thematically rich. They're wonderfully complicated, and they're films of ideas where the idea is everything. And I find that very admirable. But when you're done with them, you're not contemplating like your life or your feelings. You're contemplating what the hell you just experienced and trying to puzzle it together. That's better than not contemplating at all, but it doesn't get us there. So I just wish I don't know what to say. It's a call out to the people making movies today.
Yeah.
Because even the small movies, Nomadland, and like you string them all together, they tend to be these character only things where, you know what I mean? Where
I know exactly.
Compare Nomadland to, like, we'll talk more about that at the end of the year here, but I don't mean to compare it to like Tiger King or whatever, but it's still this. We're seeing this look into these people's lives and stuff, and that I think has real value. But even it's almost a passive direction style and a passive writing style, where the artist really isn't trying to tell you anything. They're just trying to capture something. And I wish there was a little more, you know, what's the movie with Henry VIII, and can't remember, but Robin Bolt wrote it.
I don't know. Don't know which one you mean.
It's kind of a distortion of history, so it may be a bad example, but there was a time when a screenwriter, a playwright, a film director had a point of view, and you were, for all the other trappings, that point of view is what you were going to be a slave to for the next 2 hours, and believe in it or not believe in it, that's what you had to react to when the film was over. And I don't even know our best movies of this age, I'm not feeling that in them like I used to. So.
The Other Boleyn Girl, Man for All Seasons.
Man for All Seasons.
Yeah, Man for All Seasons. Okay. All right. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna save my other hot take because I think it actually might go well, or it's
next week's show.
It might go well next week's show. It's also the kind of question that I can pretty much pull out at any time, and we've been chatting for a while. So so let's wrap it there with this hodgepodge. Some would say, considering the season that we're in, we gave people a cornucopia of topics.
a veritable cornucopia of topics.
That is true. So
I don't like to trot out the word cornucopia without preceding it with veritable, which I believe is
correct.
Yeah.
There is.
I believe they go together.
There are rules.
Yeah,
there are rules. All right. So obviously reach out to us with any questions. Talk to us about Remains of the Day and Howard's End. And let's talk about the end of that movie and how awesome it is.
Well, all the stuff we skipped in Remains of the Day, we skipped a lot of great moments.
We skipped an immense amount of great moments in Remains of the Day.
It's not a deep dive. We just wanted to kind of talk about them and what's great about them. I think our enthusiasm for them came through. So hopefully that's enough.
And you can reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can email us askjoelandryan@gmail.com. And if you're watching this on the YouTube page, well, hey, you're already there. Might as well click subscribe, and then you can hit like and write some comments there. We'll get back to you there.
That hot takes jingle makes much more sense on the YouTube page, I have to say. Those of you in audio land.
Well,
you might be a little confused by that. I was for a moment, and I'm actually watching the YouTube as I record this.
I just felt it. I felt the harshness of our regular hot takes theme coming out of talking about Remains of the Day was going to be a little bit too jarring. All right, so that is going to do it for us for this week. Thank you so much for joining on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.